Humans. Homo sapiens. People. Someone, I'm assuming, just like you. Except something's wrong. Their eyes might move frantically, or be an unnatural red. Their face might just have something off about it that you can't quite place. Maybe their smile is just a bit too wide, because of course it is. You may have seen some of these things a lot in horror, especially in recent years. Beings that resemble humans, sometimes near perfectly, but are very distinctly not. They've always been a thing that's existed ever since humanity started telling stories. Shapeshifters, evil twins, doppelgangers, whatever you want to call them. They've been scattered all over mythologies and folklores across human history. So, at least for me, it's very interesting that we've seen them have a bit of a renaissance in the horror space recently. I know that trends are always temporary, but every trend is rooted in the sensibilities of the public as they become popular. I won't be going beat by beat for any of the media presented, but I will give a bit of a brief synopsis or plot hook to provide an overview. More importantly though, I'm curious as to why they've become so popular recently. I'm sure you've guessed, but I think one specific genre makes more use of this trope than any other. Surprising absolutely no one, it's safe to say that while it's definitely expanded beyond the confines of the genre, analog horror is, without a doubt, the spearhead of the rise in popularity surrounding mimics. The Mandela catalog, created by YouTuber Alex Kister, centers its plot around alternates, a form of doppelgangers who are supernatural in nature, with a lot of biblical and otherwise religious themes surrounding the series as a whole. While, based on what I was able to find, the Mandela catalog is the only analog horror series to explicitly be centered around the concept of human mimics, other analog horror works have something similar, such as Vita Carnis, my personal favorite of the genre, which features a creature called a mimic, though it is notably less human presenting and more just a humanoid shape. That being said, a lot of the features of the alternates are present in other analog horror series, as they all tap into the uncanny nature of these beings. Features are exaggerated or warped to create an unsightly appearance. It eventually just kind of reached a singularity of copycats that essentially just look like the Germa 985's sus face, but I digress. I also wanted to give special mention to Dead by Daylight's killer, The Unknown, who is specifically stated to have been inspired by analog horror. I have a video specifically about that character if you'd like to learn more, but basically, The Unknown is a being of indeterminate origin that wears the skin of humans, trying to mimic them, but it comes off as broken and warped. While analog horror is popular enough, I still don't think that it's the sole reason for why these tropes are so popular. After all, a lot of analog horror series are incredibly unique from each other, like Monument Mythos and so on. I figure, though, that it's definitely worth mentioning as the Mandela catalog in particular really gave it a boost, while also featuring several specific key elements to its version of doppelgangers. The alternates in the series psychologically manipulate and torture their lookalikes with the intent of having them take their own lives. While the alternates are implied to be demonic in nature, I'm definitely not an expert on religious stuff, but their methods are what pique my interest the most. The idea of an evil duplicate psychologically tormenting someone is a story as old as time, and it usually has something to do with duality and identity. In regards to the Mandela catalog in particular, according to Wikipedia, which I will read verbatim, Kister had said the series originally began as a creative outlet for the existential crisis he was dealing with, especially when it came to the subject of religion and Christianity. The series was also inspired by the isolation and loss of security Kister experienced as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Huh, isolation and security? Well, that's a bit familiar. Sounds a bit like a title drop to me. There's a game that's been making the rounds this year. Hell, it's one that I played extensively on stream around Halloween time, and it's kind of what inspired me to make this video. No, I'm Not a Human is a psychological horror game developed by Russian studio Trioskaz, and on my stream night we encountered a lot of things, but something very early on stuck out to me. A friend was watching my stream and he said right out the gate something along the lines of, "This game is about discrimination." Going into this game, I knew absolutely nothing about it. I wanted to go in entirely blind, but that stuck with me. As a bit of an overview, No, I'm Not a Human centers around the sun expanding and causing an apocalypse. People can no longer go out during the day. At night, however, a new phenomenon, the Visitors, spring up. These Visitors are creatures of an unknown origin, but they seem to near perfectly resemble humans. Most of them don't even know that they're visitors, and when they find out, things can turn ugly very quickly. The main loop of the game is needing to let people into your home for shelter, as survival hinges upon having a group. It's up to the player to figure out who's a visitor and who's human. The best part about this game is that, with a few exceptions, who is and isn't a visitor is randomized throughout the game, creating an unreliability that injects paranoia directly into the experience. Back to the comment about discrimination that my friend had stated, I thought that his assessment was dead on, but I had my own spin on it as well. Now, personally, I saw the agents in the game hauling people away seemingly at random regardless of innocence, based purely on superficial factors that is seemingly justifying their suspicion. I'm not gonna lie, I found that to be, well, let's just say very topical. This game is Russian though, so it can't possibly be playing into specifically American sensibilities, so what the hell could it really be about? The beauty about No, I'm Not a Human is that it's far more abstract than that. Ever since I played the game for myself, I found a wealth of fantastic videos about this subject on YouTube. Some talking about discrimination, especially when it's institutionalized, others talking about death, distrust, and the exploitation of fear, or even about what loneliness does to a motherfucker. The flexibility of this game's meaning is part of what makes it such a fantastic foray into psychological horror, and it's what makes me enjoy it so much. In a way, literally all of these are correct, and rely a lot on personal experiences and fears. Everyone's gonna find something in this game that hits close to home. As an aside, I wanted to share some anecdotes that really stuck with me that I really wish I had saved from the stream. Two in particular. One of the first people that I let in was the stoner, who quickly became my favorite character. We referred to him as the Daniel Larson guy, and chat dubbed him the GOAT as he was the clear favorite. I, and the chat alongside me, gave him a lot of special treatment and benefit of the doubt. If he died or was taken by FEMA in any of the runs, we were all distraught, even actively trying to get others taken for the benefit of keeping him in the house. In another situation, there was a teenage girl who I let into the house. I figured, because she was wearing braces, she couldn't possibly be a visitor. However, someone died one night, and I had to do some more tests. I checked her eyes, and they were a very vibrant shade of red. Immediately, I figured that she was 100% a visitor. After all, irises are not naturally red, so I ended up making the choice to kill her. Imagine my fucking stunned silence when trash bags appeared instead of the digitized visitor corpse imagery. I wish I'd kept that video, but I forgot that Twitch auto-deletes stuff after 7 days. That specific interaction did more to terrify me than the entirety of the scenes revolving around judgeholden.jpg. In that moment, I realized that I fell prey to my own paranoia that the game had established, that I became the monster in that moment. That one action cost someone their life, all because I was the judge, jury, and executioner in that split second. All of this is to say, No, I'm Not a Human is an absolutely phenomenal game, and I highly recommend it to any fans of psychological horror. The replay value alone is unmatched. The visitors managing to represent all of these things and more is a really interesting angle. All of these things, isolation, death, and so on, are something I feel has grown to be a very prominent set of fears, but I'm gonna come back to that later because there's one more thing I want to discuss before I really dig into the why of this subject. After seeing his entire filmography, I think that Us is my favorite of Jordan Peele's horror films, though Get Out is a close second. I guess rankings don't really mean much when there's only 3 films he's directed and all of them are great. Anyways, Jordan Peele's horror films are often allegorical in nature, and in the case of Us, it's no different. The main hook of the movie is that, beneath the United States, there are perfect copies or clones of the populace, referred to as the tethered, who mirror and mimic their above-ground counterparts. Antics ensue. I'm trying to be as vague as possible because you never know who in the audience hasn't seen the movie yet. Point is, there's a bit to unpack here. Us is, at its core, a movie about inequality and privilege, particularly viewed from an American lens. The people above ground represent those with comfortable lives, while the tethered, ignored by those on the surface, toil away, forgotten and buried, representative of marginalized and lower-class individuals or groups. Peele says in the official special features of this film's digital release, that's where the tethered connection, I think, resonates the most, is that those who suffer and those who prosper are two sides of the same coin. You can never forget that. We need to fight for the less fortunate. So with this interpretation, it's clear that the idea of mirrors, doppelgangers, or mimics can have a wide range of representations, most intertwined with the idea of identity in one's place in society. But now, I want to preface this section with a bit of a content warning. This next rant is going to be dangerously close to old man yells at cloud territory. Anyways, a lot of common threads have emerged from looking into these, and reflecting on what older works have always said, the idea of using a thing that mimics humans in stories, and especially horror, is rooted in whatever the current fears of the populace at large happen to be, whether it intends to or not. Like I said before, it usually taps into something very personal from person to person. Hell, Invasion of the Body Snatchers can be viewed simply as fears surrounding mistrust during the Cold War, but But it also seems to have a divide of interpretations, in that it can be viewed as taking a jab at either communism or McCarthyism, depending on who you ask. So the whole point of this line of thinking is that the root of doppelgangers in horror is paranoia and distrust, usually revolving around some sort of duality in society. That's a good enough starting point, but why now? It feels like, as all of the aforementioned topics are recent, us being the oldest in 2019, there's a bit of a trend of these imposters showing up more and more often. It doesn't seem to be stopping either. After all, No, I'm Not a Human is one of the big ticket horror games of this year, so it's a method that's found plenty of success. But with this in mind, what are some universal woes that seem to be present that cause creatives from all over the world to be interested in exploring? Well, aside from us, most of these projects come from 2020 and beyond, and, well, you know. The COVID pandemic, in short, kept all of us inside of our homes, alongside a whole other mess of problems, including, But I think there's more to this phenomenon than just the pandemic. It only compounded on the existing isolation that many people felt even before it started. According to an article posted by Harvard University, citing the US Surgeon General at the time, Vivek Murthy, although many people grew lonelier during the COVID-19 pandemic, about half of American adults had already reported experiences of loneliness even before the outbreak. Now, I think I speak for everyone when I say, excuse me, fucking half? Now, a lot of factors play into that, in some ways surprising, in some ways not. For example, there was not a large divide in racial and gender identity having a major difference in levels of isolation, but the biggest no shit of them all is that levels of income affected levels of loneliness and isolation. It turns out, the more money you have, the more you don't exactly feel disconnected from people. Who would have guessed? And, mind you, this article isn't just referencing your garden variety loneliness, this is some advanced levels of isolation. Of those who were lonely, for example, 65% said that they felt fundamentally separate or disconnected from others or the world, and 57% said that they were unable to share their true selves with others. Holy fuck. So, two things. One, I'm not gonna lie, kind of relate to that a little. And two, you may be asking, what does this have to do with horror? To answer that, firstly, that percentage number is staggeringly terrifying. But also, that second statistic in particular, the inability to share their true selves with others, doesn't that ring a bit of a bell here? But where did this sentiment come from? Well, looking at that same article, I'll go from least to most influential based on their data. It goes, lack of spirituality, the changing nature of work, and focus on one's own feelings. This one seemed to be a sort of miscellaneous catch-all. 50%. Living in a society that's too individualistic. 58%. Mental health concerns. 60%. People feeling overworked, busy, or tired. 62%. Insufficient time with family. 66%. And the last one, technology. A whopping 73%. Now, in regards to most forms of mimic horror that I went over, technology is less of a direct theme in a literal sense, with the exception of Mandela Catalog. But a lot of the side effects of technologically induced isolation are definitely present. For all the good it's done, the increased sophistication of technology has bred a massive sense of distrust in people. It's pretty easy to see, too, as it gets worse and worse the more shit that comes out. Outside of the scamming, anonymity allowing people to be the very worst that they can be, seeming lack of security, ruining the dating scene, feeling of constantly being watched, rampant misinformation, and let's not forget our favorite eldritch horror, artificial intelligence. It's no wonder that people don't really trust each other. Especially since social media became a big bloated cesspool that allowed all of these previous things to fester. See, I told you, old man yells at cloud. I mentioned this. But for real, there's no denying that while social media is a tool that lets people become technically more connected than ever, it also acts a bit like a petri dish of sorts. Dead internet theory, for one thing, seems to be more and more realistic with each passing year. Now, I'll get a bit off of my boomer-sounding horse here for a second and state that, for the record, I don't think it's just social media bad, although sometimes it very much can be, but rather, we have access to more information right now than anyone has before in any other time in human history. Outside of all of that, we also have a lot more awareness of the goings-on in the world around us. For better and, let's be honest, more often than not, worse. So yeah, people are very distrustful of each other, institutions that clearly don't have any interest in helping them, and so on. And to be perfectly clear, yeah, people have been saying and experiencing this shit for eons, like, as long as humanity devised ways to oppress each other. But still, I think it being so front and center is definitely a bit of a contributor contributing factor. This is all, of course, to give the most unsatisfying answer ever. Because the idea of malicious doubles has been ingrained into storytelling since forever, it's basically just a universal sort of fear. The idea of something that looks human but isn't. The whole uncanny valley thing and all that. I think it's just interesting that we seem to be seeing these evil twins so much in horror as of recent. Of course, I'm no expert, it's probably just TikTok or something popularizing the trend. I don't know shit about fuck, but I just thought it was a fascinating idea. I'm sure it'll eventually sort of fizzle out and then just pop up every now and then until we deal with our next bout of living through a major historical event or two. Until then, who knows? But what do you think? Is this all just grasping at straws? What experiences do you have with this kind of horror? I would love to see what everyone in the comments thinks about this, and if you want to see more videos like this or something related to a franchise you enjoy, I would greatly appreciate a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. See you again soon.
Pierdolę, patrzcie co spotkałem. Bubr, kurwa! Ja pierdolę, jakie bydle! Bober! Ej!